if you're doing a whole universe, you got to remember what planets are in what part of the universe. You got to remember what like galaxy this is and what this is. And I still don't even know if I know all of them. I wrote down a lot of them, but
All right, welcome back, everybody, to another episode of the I Didn't Read Your Book podcast. I am your host, Lutch, and today we are going to be talking with Timothy Robert about his book, God and the 12 Knights. So jumping into the cover already, this is giving me some cool vibes, especially coming off of watching Moon Knight, the Marvel show. I see front and center is something that looks like an Anubis type thingy. I don't know exactly what it is or what it's for, but I know it's Egyptian. And then, of course, we've got some pyramids in the back. The Wolf Bowl series, book 1. So clearly we've got a series. And then there is what looks like a spaceship. And, with the title, God and the 12 Knights, it makes me think of either the future or the past. There's a lot of theories around the Egyptian civilization and how they were able to do a lot of things they were able to do in the past. And that also kind of gives way for a sci-fi series to kind of close that gap and time travel and all of that stuff. I mean, it's very well put together. I mean, it's very eye-catching. But in terms of where this is going to go, those are the two areas that I think make sense. And you guys know how I love time travel, so I'm hoping we're going in. I'm hoping we're going in that direction, because that would be really cool. So without further ado, let's dive right in and read the back of the book. In the future, God has come back for vengeance to purge the universe of sin. In his way stand 12 knights that belong to the Human Federation with special powers, a wolf dog with an astronaut outfit, on another federation, and some of the old gods. All must come together in order to defeat the Almighty. So that kind of gives me more like Infinity War Endgame Marvel vibes, where you have a lot going on and you need to gather all these powers to defeat the Almighty. So it's actually pretty cool that God is positioned as an enemy or as someone to be defeated in this. That is not necessarily something that you see all the time, but that definitely piques my interest. Depending on what exactly this is, we could be having a very interesting conversation. And, as we've seen with some of our other authors, they can have very extensive knowledge about some of the areas. It's not always just random fiction coming off the brain. There's a lot of research that goes into this stuff. And I think that's going to be really cool. Now, if you recognize the name Timothy Robert, he has been on the show before. We are bringing back another guest 2 weeks in a row, but it's my show. I'll do what I want. And he had a new book coming out, and I wanted to share it with you guys. So we know a little bit about Timothy himself, but I'm very excited to see what is going on with this book. So without further ado, let's bring in Timothy. All right, and there he is, Timothy Robert. How have you been, my friend?
pretty good. How about you?
Good. So we were just looking at the cover and the back of your book, and I must say the cover is very aesthetically pleasing. My first thoughts going in, because I saw I probably wouldn't have even recognized it had it not been for Moon Knight, but the Anubis type thingy in the foreground, and then obviously the pyramids helped me there. And then with the spaceship, I was like, okay, this is either probably something to do with like time travel and the Egyptian civilization and how they're doing all of that. But then reading the back of the book, there is quite a different topic there. So what I really liked is that God seems to be the antagonist in this story. Is that accurate?
It is.
Awesome.
Fortunate to my family's view of the story. But yeah, God is, and Lucifer is actually in the story as a protagonist, which is
Oh,
That's
very
not
cool.
the script.
Nice, nice. So where did this idea come from?
To flip the script or the novel in general?
The novel in general, but yeah, I guess the idea to use that inversion.
I was always curious, growing up in a Christian household, I was always curious of what if God is actually the tyrant, like he says he is in the Old Testament multiple times? And what if Lucifer was, this good guy trying to bring democracy to a tyranny? Because we experience that in real life all the time, democracy versus communism, tyrannies, all that stuff. And I was like, what if, Lucifer tried to stand up to the Almighty and he was like, nope, I'm the Almighty, and just kind of was like, you're going down, you and the other archangels that followed you. And what if Lucifer was actually, he's the light bringer? What if he was actually trying to bring the light to the heavens and God was like, no, this is mine?
That's awesome. I love that. How do you think the background of being brought up Christian has affected the way that you would write a story like this?
I think I just guess I have more insight. I mean, I went to catechism for like 10 years.
Oh wow.
So a lot of Bible studies, a lot of this and that. And then I've always been a person that likes to research. So, researching into the Vatican, researching into the original Bible text, researching all this stuff. And I think it plays a big role because at least it's something I'm familiar with. And also having a super religious family that does not support this novel at all.
And it's a series, so they have tons of time to love it.
Yeah, hopefully. My mom, I actually called her and she's like, "Oh, I'm going to buy your book. It's about God." And I was like, "I don't think it's about God the way you want it to be." And I told her,
It is about God,
yeah.
but
And I told her, I was like, "It's fine. It's fantasy." And she's like, "Why are you fantasizing about God being like that?" And I was like, "Well, that's not exactly what fantasy means, but I guess it's close enough." So they're actually boycotting my book, which is kind of funny. But
nice.
yeah, I'm the rebel of the family, I guess. But I think growing up Christian just gave me a different insight. And my family's always been annoyed because I've always been the questioner. I'm always like, well, why is it like this? And
how dare you?
Yeah. And I'm like, why do you think God is that nice when he's out destroying cities and stuff? Not that, I mean, I'm religious to an extent too. So,
And so, where would you, how would you characterize your religious beliefs or however you would describe them?
They're a mix of my spirituality from being native and then growing up in a Christian household. But I just believe, I believe in Jesus and I believe in his teachings, whether he's the son of God or just a really good person with some powers or whatever. I believe in just doing nice things for people and doing the right thing and hopefully getting to wherever the next place is, whether that be heaven or whatever it's called.
Yeah, so, and I think that's a great way to go about life. I'm very open about the fact that I am an atheist, but I also grew up Christian, and the teachings that come from that ideology are not all bad. In fact, many of them are very good. And it's my axe to grind is that they've got to be tied together. But I'm glad to see that there are more people who are comfortable kind of doing their own, making their own version of what religion is. Now, I mean, if we really wanted to get into it, I would want people to be ditching all the religious language and just saying like, look, this is the good stuff that we like. It has no supernatural whatever, but teach their own. And the idea of just, like you said, questioning and understanding what it is that you believe and why you believe it, I think that's really important.
Yeah, I think we should question everything, honestly. So, and this novel actually started part because of that. I was talking to someone. Well, I was doing this novel on the side just for fun. Like the wolf dog character I talk about is literally just meant to be like this comedic character. It wasn't meant to be deep at all. And then I was talking to someone else about what I thought, maybe the Old Testament was and what maybe God and Lucifer were. I was like, oh, that's fun. So I added that in and I was like, I'm going to make God the bad guy in this novel because why not? He's the Almighty and he blows up cities on earth. Why not do it all around?
Makes sense to me.
Then, I've always had an obsession with ancient Egypt. So, and I love Anubis. The whole concept of Anubis to me is super cool.
So yeah, can you dive into that part a little bit? Because again, Moon Knight was just on, so I recognize the imagery. And I learned about it in school, like in grade school, but I don't really remember too much about it, or I don't know how in depth they even went with it.
They don't really go, I mean, at least in my school, they didn't really go into the mythology of what the
Yeah.
Egyptians believed. And I mean, Egyptian belief went all the way to Rome, and some people still follow it. I mean, there's a pyramid out in Salt Lake City for some ancient Egyptian followers. But I just was always obsessed with the idea of Anubis, this crazy jackal creature that's not really, opposed to Christianity, where the devil is just like bad and trying to do stuff. Anubis is just like the guider of souls to the afterlife and the final judgment or whatever, but he doesn't do it, with any intent. It's all the intent of the person that he's looking at.
Gotcha.
So, it's what they did in their life, and he's just the decider of that, and as far as I know, the protector of the other realm for the Egyptians. And then Ra, obviously being the bright sun god or whatever you want to call him, is just fascinating in general. So I wanted to throw them in, and I visited the pyramids, which are otherworldly. Like everything about them is totally otherworldly. And I was like, why not? If we put these pyramids here, whoever did, why aren't there pyramids on other planets? Maybe. So I got into the idea of, there was this big war at this turning point in the world, and God and the old gods, kind of had their battle where God kind of won and killed some of the old gods, and then the other ones disappeared to far off planets that they also had. So in the novel, it has, there's other planets with huge pyramids that still worship the old gods, and they're hiding because God is trying, he's back for vengeance in this novel, and he's seeking out the old gods one by one to try to kill them before they can come together. And the 12 knights that are mentioned on the front, it's actually funny because I didn't even think about the 12 disciples when
I figured that was 12 knights, 12 disciples. There you go.
Yeah, it's almost a little bit misleading because that would have been a cool thought, but the 12 knights are actually so it's in the future, and there's human federations. Humans have gone past the Milky Way, and there's all these different federations, and the human federation have the 12 knights, which are actually based off the Greek gods, some of them, and some of them are based off of emotions. So each knight has a specific power, specific emotion. There's like Poseidon, Ares, Death, Zeus. There's a female knight that's based off of love, one that's based off of sorrow. And they kind of have these different entities and totally different personalities and powers. One of them is, from Achilles' time. They're all from these different times, but they all fight for the humans because they're from this realm. So they actually have to come together with Lucifer, which is kind of a shit show at first. The old Egyptian gods that are left, which is also, kind of wild because there's totally different personalities. And then thrown into it is my little wolf dog character with an astronaut helmet that ends up fighting for the Galactic Federation. That's kind of an all-inclusive, everybody fight for the same side type of thing. So it's just kind of this, there's all kinds of banner and everything, but it's all these different philosophies and religions and then futuristic sections trying to come together while they're also kind of fighting each other and having their difficulties in order to, stop God and his angels from wreaking havoc.
Yeah. So how easy or difficult was it to mix the Egyptian gods and those religious ideas with the Christian, like the capital G God and Lucifer and all that stuff?
I would say it's difficult in the way of doing it honor, maybe. I don't think there's ever a way that you can mix like 5-6 cultures or belief systems or anything and do them all justice, probably. So I probably didn't do it the justice I could, but I mean, I thought it was difficult, but also really fun. And also, the Egyptian gods probably wouldn't even speak English, or I don't know what they would speak, but I doubt they would speak English. So how do you, give
these telepathic? They could just
give these personalities to, this jackal god and this bird-headed god from ancient Egypt, and how do you give these specific like Greek-like personalities or godlike personalities to these people, and how do you what do you make Lucifer like? Do you make him this evil depiction of some of what the Vatican shows, or do you make him what some people from the Bible say, which is like cunning and alluring and handsome, or do you make him, ugly and grotesque, which I made him I made him a beautiful godlike creature that is cunning and people kind of go to him, but there's also conflict between the ones that are trying to get together, because obviously, you have Ares, the god of war, who's fiery and wants to fight people. So him and Lucifer are having issues, and then the old gods obviously don't want anything to do with some of these other gods, and it's doing them all justice was kind of fun and also probably super difficult at the time. But because it was
sounds like it.
Yeah, but because it was on the side of my series, my big series that I work on, it was kind of just all for fun. So it was more of like a novel that was kind of like, I'm gonna throw all the stuff I really want to play with together and see how it goes and have fun with it, opposed to my other series where I'm like, I need to make this as perfect as possible, and it has to be, this, and this. This is kind of like, I want to make this fun and have people, go through it. Like I have Thor in it. He doesn't have a big purpose, but I have him in it in like a random bar that they're on in some far off planet. He's fighting people.
Nice.
Yeah, and then just like a random, one part there's a random leprechaun that rides into a bar on a rainbow. And I just throw like all this different myth in that we view as myth, as like real life stuff that's in the future. And it's just like, it's not really myth, as these things came to this planet, but they're on all these other planets too. So they're everywhere.
So how far in the future is this set?
Wow. It's actually probably bad that I don't even know if I put a date in the book or not. In my head, like 200 to 300 years.
Okay.
But I honestly probably put way further than that. I'm so bad with dates. I don't even know my mother's birthday, which she's not going to watch this, so it's okay to say. But yeah, I don't even know if
in case it's today, happy birthday, Timmy's mom.
I know it's in October at least. Yeah, I don't know if I really put in a date, because it's like the thing I was least focused on, as trying to like show this huge universe and where it's at. I'm sure I put a date probably once.
Yeah, I guess, and the time setting is going to be very important if you're based in a world that we have a frame of reference. But I guess if you're traveling all over space and you're dealing with these quote unquote myths, then exactly how far in the future isn't necessarily as relevant, because it's not going to be similar to the Earth that we know anyway, because we're not spending as much time here.
Right. I call it sci fantasy because it's not sci-fi really. I mean, it's futuristic and everything, but I don't use all the sci-fi linguistics and everything. I don't even know what qualifies as sci-fi anymore after all my research, but I view it more as like a futuristic fantasy setting. So, sci-fi novels are all about their dates and their times. And I was just like, I'm going to make this as fantastical as possible, and probably should have paid attention to those small, minute details like sci-fi people do. But I kind of just went with it and hoped that it would just be a fun story with some deep meaning. I mean, in the novel, heaven and hell are on the other side of the black hole. And everybody's obsessed with black holes probably now, but I read about them all the time. And I was like, nothing that we know can get through them, but there's something there. So what if it's just like a portal that the essence of our physical bodies can't go through, but a soul could go through? So, and to me, that was like, what if that's the afterlife? Like you can't reach it because you're still living, but once you're dead, you can go. So, out of it, when God finally comes, he like comes out of like black holes with his angels. Because
very interesting. So this is obviously, for those of you who don't know or don't remember, Timothy has been a previous guest on the platform with his book, The Story of a World War II Vet, which is a great episode. Please go check that out and buy the book. But that is a very different type of, but I can't even say story, a very different type of book than this. I mean, what was it like to like what was the main differences between documenting something and then putting your own flair on it versus starting from scratch and just whatever comes to mind, not whatever comes to mind, but whatever whatever comes to mind, you're having fun and just throwing it in there?
Totally different ways of writing. One, you have to do justice. I mean, if you want to do the person justice, which in my case I did, you have to do justice, and you want it to be like really realistic. You want people to be able to gravitate to it and to really tell a story that's already there.
With the World War II vet you're talking about. Yeah. That was the other one.
You have to word it the right way for that, you just have to reword his story and make it a complete story.
Right.
Whereas, this book, the God in 12 Nights book, is total free range to do whatever I want, and nobody can tell me otherwise because it's a work of fiction. And really liberating, really fun, really exciting, just total freedom. It feels different to publish a little bit because, one, the World War II vet, I was like, wanting to publish for him, wanting to publish his story out there. Whereas this one's more of a fun, yes, there's serious stuff in it, but a fun, exciting read. So they're like really almost two sides, like two totally different sides of a coin, because
I bet
writing them, reading them, everything about them is totally different.
Yeah, because I mean, like, I think that if, I was in the situation where I had come across a World War II vet and I was spending time with him, that as somebody who's not a writer, I would definitely have a much easier time relaying his story in my own book, in my own way, than, coming up with an entire, not even just world, but a whole universe, really. I mean, that's something. Have you always had that type of imagination where you could just pull these things out of thin air? Or is it a lot of stuff based on, the real mythology, and stuff like that? Obviously the astronaut dog is not in Egyptian lore, I don't think, but
not that I know of. No, I think I've always kind of had that. I mean, I used to write like these weird little like Dragon Ball Z books in like 4th grade. I would like write these books, I'd print them out and everything. But I've always been able to, ignore the mess, I'm moving. Should have said that first. But I think I've always been too creative almost. Like that's probably part of my problem with Christianity or other religions is I'm so creative that I'm like, this could be this could be this. And I just love building stuff from nothing. And I mean, nothing's really from nothing if you follow, the stereotype.
Sure.
Of everything's been done, you're just redoing it. But for me, it's nothing. But the mythology definitely, played a role. Like visiting the pyramids, I was like, wow, this stuff is, otherworldly. Seeing certain things and reading certain things about myth or religions or whatever title you want to give them kind of adds to that. But I think I've always had the ability to pull things out and just make them whatever I wanted, which is fun, but it also is difficult because a lot of times it ends up in a giant mess.
Yeah, that's what I think. I've always talked about how, like, I grew up a musician, so my imagination always goes to music. Like, I could write an entire song in my head, and then it comes out, and I could do that. But when it comes to like none of my tattoos, I haven't designed any of them. I always go in with an idea, and I need somebody else to visualize what it is. And the same thing with writing. Like, I had always enjoyed writing, but the creative writing where you're doing fiction, that was always such a big hurdle for me because my mind just doesn't work that way. So it's always fascinating to see what people can just come up with, whether it's based heavily on reality or whether it's just completely out of, again, everything is based on something, but the notion of coming up with a story that spans an entire galaxy and more, and you've got the different gods and all that stuff, there's got to be a lot that you got to keep straight with that, I would imagine.
Yeah, I actually got one character's name like wrong halfway through the novel and had to go back and totally redo it because there's so many names in the novel, there's so many characters because you have all these different federations and gods and you're bouncing around. So that part was difficult. And keeping, I actually admire and respect people that have what they're doing first, that like have their lists and their papers and like, this is here, this person's this is this. And I don't do that because I just can't. I just get into my work and I just start going. Yeah, and this person's this and this is happening. I go along with the whole thing. I don't have a route. I don't have a linear path of where I'm going. I don't have anything down. And then I have to go back through after and do it, which is tedious. And I started realizing with this one, if you're doing a whole universe, you got to remember what planets are in what part of the universe. You got to remember what like galaxy this is and what this is. And I still don't even know if I know all of them. I wrote down a lot of them, but looks like a fifth grader's notes of history class. It's like, yeah, this, and this. So I actually admire people that do it the other way, because it's probably a million times easier. But
perhaps, but I think, you know, it works differently for everybody. You know, thinking of stand-up comedy. There's, you know, I'm a big fan of stand-up comedy, and I listen to a lot of podcasts from comics, and it's interesting to see the ones that you know, will write down, and like Joe Rogan's a big writer of his jokes. He'll write them down and work on them, and you know, then take notes and record the set, and a lot of other comics will just kind of go up there and do it. And I mean, even when it comes to podcasting, you know, this podcast is pretty much unscripted. You know, aside from the fact that I know I'm going to look at a cover and read a synopsis, we're just coming in and having the conversation. Whereas other people, especially, you know, I didn't even realize that it could be so different, because I went on somebody else's podcast where they had a list of questions ready, and there was no attempt to have it flow. It was just like, okay, question 1, what do you think of this? And like, I would give my answer. But, okay, cool. All right. Question 2. And then he just, you know, he cut it together like that, which is interesting. I'm sure that you could get away with doing things in a, you know, that'll be a much shorter, succinct thing, but that's just not the way I operate. I'm, you know, in that way, I guess you and I are somewhat alike, where I just gotta let it flow, baby.
Yeah, I like everything to be natural, and sometimes it kicks me in the ass. Like, obviously, sometimes having a script or whatever, you know, gives you a linear path to where you're going, what you're doing, and probably makes things a little more efficient. But it's also not as like real.
Yeah.
You know, if you schedule every part of your day, you'd be like, man, this is boring. But
yeah, I completely agree.
Stuff in, and then, you know, you can go through the fine details after, which can be tedious, because that's what I did. I went and, you know, started writing lists of characters and where stuff is, and probably don't have it all down, and which is going to be probably difficult for the next, because I do have a sequel started, a book 2 kind of started, a rough draft.
Do you know how far you want to take it? Like, how many books you want to do?
I don't really, because I'm so caught up in my other trilogy, and I have 2 other books I want to write with that one after, because I'm on book 3 for that one, that it's taken up takes up a lot of my time and effort. But, you know, I started book 2 freehanding when I didn't have my computer, when it was broken, and it depends on how book 1 does, I guess. Like, I would like to see how that does, and if people want a book 2, for sure. I mean, I'll probably definitely do a book 2, because book 2 is going to be the Rise of Set. So it's going to be, you know, another Egyptian-based one, but it's, you know, it also has there's things called Draganas in this world, and they're like giant dragon warriors, really beastly, and, you know, these other races were afraid of them because they were conquering the universe. So they actually started like a genocide. They started shooting them and making them so they couldn't breed.
Wow.
Yeah, they had like this group of really smart alien species make this injection that would stop them from being able to breed so much. So, you know, book 2 is one of the main characters from book 1 trying to get his race to be able to thrive again. And then Set wants revenge, obviously, against Ra and, you know, Horus and Anubis and all of them, and wants to take over stuff. So he ends up getting them on his side. So I think it's a fun spin from book 1. I don't know. I have no idea where I want to go with it, because book 1, you know, it has a lot of serious stuff, but also a lot of funny stuff. And I don't know if I mean, my third book has some, or my main series I'm working on has some humor, but has a lot of serious stuff, a lot of really like real topics, even though it's fantasy. And this one's supposed to be more fun. So I'm going to see when I get there, but I definitely like to do at least another book, or maybe 2 if it goes well.
Nice. So I wonder how do you balance that, you know, that having not necessarily equal parts, but how do you balance the serious parts with the more fun parts with you know, how can you tell if, you know, do you ever feel like, okay, I'm writing and this is I need to throw in some levity here, or how does that work?
Oh yeah, for sure. Man, I wish I knew how it worked. Sometimes, like, writing humor is hard anyway. Even in school, when we were talking about writing things, my professor was like, humor is one of the hardest things. Because, you know, you're trying to be funny to who had totally different readers. violence is easy. You can be violent and people are gonna be like, yeah, that's violent. But
That makes sense.
making like 80% of people laugh is not easy. I'm sure comedians, like you talked about, would agree. Like making a whole audience laugh, how often does that happen?
Yeah.
So in this series, it was kind of easy because I have all this real stuff, and then I have this wolf dog character that's actually based off of a friend of mine that I grew up with. He's like a funny
An actual dog.
freckles, kind of
Just kidding.
goofy and all over the place and whatever. And this character is kind of based off of him loosely, so he brings a lot of the comedic relief.
I think that's a good what do they call it? I don't know what the word is, but a good plot device, I guess. That's a good plot device that you can get into the nitty gritty, and you can tell these serious stories because you built in something that will, whenever you need that levity, whenever it's getting a little bit too, just dry or solemn or whatever it is, you got an astronaut dog.
Yeah, exactly. And he's like goofy, and he gets in all these situations, and he's just like, he's like a dog. He has a tongue out, and he's just like, yeah, whatever. Life is life. And like he gets beat up and thrown around by these big angry aliens, and he's just like has fun and thinks they're playing with him and like wrestles them and beats them up. But he has fun while doing it. It's not like he's actively angry or trying to hurt anybody. So he's just like, oh, we're wrestling, we're playing like dogs do. And then I do like Anubis and Ra. I think I gave dry humor because they're these ancient gods and they're bigger than everybody and they're intimidating looking, and their humor doesn't work the same. So I kind of gave them that essence. And then the 12 Knights, they all have their different personalities, and some of them are like brothers. So they have these relatable, stupid arguments and fights that I think also add a sense of comedic relief in a different way. So I think I added like random pieces of different comedy that are relatable through certain things, but the main character being this goofy wolf dog through, these ancient Egyptian gods and these Greek gods with powers and Lucifer and God and all this really serious, like wild stuff, and just having this this wolf dog that stands on 2 feet, talks, and has a astronaut costume on, adds just like, it can never be too serious because it always bounces back.
Yeah, it's very it's very apt that you would have something that device, and again, like the fact that it's always there really helps you out if you're ever in a jam. Just like, oh, let's go here. And it's not like a cheap gag, as long as you make it a legitimate part of the story. I think that's where whether it's books or movies or TV or whatever, where you're doing things just for the sake of doing them, or you're doing them just to check off boxes. But I think it's probably, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like if you're just coming at this from more of I want to have fun doing it, then the ideas themselves, maybe not the final draft, but the ideas themselves probably come a little bit more easily because you're just having fun.
Yeah, I would say, my other series, I'm so invested in it and it's so serious. I was like, man, I got to take a break. I got to do something that I'm not worried about what people think about. And creating these characters and, creating this plot that's, really real and intense, but funny it was just thrilling. It was fun to just be able to do whatever I want with these characters, not worry about the outcome, not worry about how it ends, not worry about what people think about them. Whereas my other one, I'm constantly worried. I'm like, oh, what are people going to think about this character? Is this character going to die? Are they going to live? Are they going to fall in love? What is their end game? Which I talk about with my editor and other people that have read some of this novel series multiple times. Like, oh, what's going to happen to this one? And sometimes I get too dark because this novel is meant to be, that series is meant to be more like George R. R. Martin, where it's really real. People die, heroes don't live forever. Like against Tolkien, who is like, Gandalf can die 155 times from fire demons and whatever else, but he's going to be there because heroes need to survive.
Right.
So, I kind of went along the lines of both of them. This novel series is more like...
Well, sorry to interrupt your podcast experience. I just want to remind you, if you're enjoying what you're watching, please hit the like button and subscribe for more content. And if you really love it, there's some support links in the description. I would love if you could help out the channel. And back to the show.
Characters are going to survive or whatever, probably, and have a lot of fun.
Maybe.
Right. Some of them not. But, overall, it's going to be a lot more fun and light, even with the depth, whereas my other one, has humor and fun, but it's a lot more gritty. So giving myself the ability to write something for me opposed to write something that I want to be, obviously as a writer or an author, you want your novel to be loved. You want everybody to have fun with it.
Of
But,
course.
if someone tore apart my one that I'm like really serious about and like invested so much time in, I'd be like, oh, damn. But if someone tore this one apart, I'd be like, okay.
You just don't get it.
Yeah. Be like, you don't understand the fun of it. It's fine. And that's kind of the fun of this one anyways, is I had so much fun writing it that I hope people have fun reading it. Whereas the other one, I want people to think and I want people to feel and I want people to do all this. Where this one is just meant to be like a fun journey that does have some intensity and violence and depth, but just, interesting and exciting to go along with.
Yeah, just the way that you're talking about it. I mean, I know we haven't talked that long, but just from comparing to the last episode that we did, and again, we're talking about a real World War II vet, it's a very serious topic, and you can tell just from the way you're talking about it, this is a much more lighthearted thing, and then at the same time, I mean, again, just from the episode, knowing that you are somebody who thinks about putting depth and a message and something into what you're writing, that's exciting to see what you're gonna do with that. I'm curious how you intend to, I guess, market, for lack of a better word, this book with God and the number 12 in the name. When people are probably going to react like your parents, who was like, oh God, I want this. Are you prepared for some of that religious pushback?
Yeah, I am. I think I'm actually excited for it.
That's what I like to hear.
Not even anything against religion. I just think I get excited for people viewing things certain ways, and I'm kind of excited for people to be like, this is misleading or you're anti this or whatever, because I feel like I'm witty enough to be like, well, I can argue with you about this all day long. But also, with pushback, a lot of times novels become huge. So I'm totally okay with that. And I think
that's a great point.
I think it's funny that I didn't even think about the 12 nights. It just happened to be that number of nights I created. And, the title, I looked at it after, I was like, oh, okay. And then my mom called me and was like, oh, you wrote about God and all that. And I was like, oh man, I didn't even think about how this title was going to, and then having the pyramids in the background and a spaceship and stuff, I was like, huh. So now I'm kind of like, what are people going to take this as? I feel like someone religious is going to see it in a book or in a bookstore, hopefully, or online and be like, oh, I'm going to get that. And they're going to get it and be like, what the heck?
Yeah. Well, hey, as your resident atheist, if anybody's ever coming at you and you don't know what to say, hit me up. I got you.
Yeah, I mean, I've argued with my family of Christians and other Christians forever anyways about my differing beliefs as far as being a Christian goes. So, it's fun for me. And I think any pushback is acceptable and also exciting to see what people have to say anyways. I'm always open to other people's beliefs and how they view things. And, yeah, it sucks that my family's boycotting my novel because they should have been my first 10 sales. But I also understand, so it's okay.
Fair enough. Yeah, like we said before, it ain't for you. It's not for you.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to I emailed Barnes and Noble, if they put it on their shelves, I would love to just get a camera and go in there and see people pick up the book and start reading the back. And just video all their reactions. So someone's probably gonna be like, huh, that's interesting. And someone's gonna be like, sacrilegious, throw it. So that'd actually be a really fun little thing to do if it ever got that big. But yeah, I've never been worried about pushback in my entire life. I've never been worried about what people think. I usually laugh at it, if anything. No, if okay, your opinion, that's funny. I've been at a place for a long time where whatever someone thinks or their opinion, I'll respect it, but it doesn't bother me. I'm not going to let someone's energy affect me like that. And I had fun writing it, so I could care less anyways. If someone reviewed it and was like, wow, you write like dog shit, I'd be like, oh, damn. But if someone was like, oh, you can't believe you would talk about God like this, I'd be like,
that's completely different.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, I'm an atheist and I hated this because it was written terribly. That's a very different comment than I refuse to read this type of. I mean, how much do you obviously there are going to be people with anything that you do that involves religion. There's going to be people who take that position. But if you the way that you wrote it, how thinking on it now, do you think that a lot of people will be able, a lot of religious people will be able to understand, okay, this is just a story. It talks about my God, but it's just a story, and I'm here for it. Or do you think it's more a wider range of Christian or religious audience is going to take issue with what's in the book?
I think religious people that aren't Christian or maybe aren't Jewish too are going to think it's interesting. I think Christians are going to be in like three sects. I think there's going to be the Christian people that are like my family and are like, hell no, I'm not reading this. This is terrible. This is, against our religion. I think there's going to be the ones that are familiar with the Old Testament and are like, that's an interesting concept. I don't believe it, but I'm interested in reading it because, there's some merit to this biblically. There's, Sodom and Gomorrah, and there's, Lucifer being his name meaning a light bringer, and there's, God being a self-titled tyrant that he admits, and an angry possessive God. And then there's going to be the sect of Christians that are kind of on the fence. They're like, it's obviously fantasy. There's pyramids. Does it really impact our religion or our religious beliefs? Most likely not. There's a wolf dog with an astronaut costume.
Right. It's like, what are you expecting here?
Right.
So can you, because I mean, we read the back of the book, but talking to you, there's so much more in this story that than you can fit in one paragraph. So I'm curious what is this a typical like hero's journey type thing? What is really the heart of this story?
I mean, the bigger message is obviously like nothing is one-sided and everything is not what you think it is, no matter what you believe anyway, probably. But I guess the main path of the story is probably a couple. There's probably, even people that don't, or entities, people, whatever, that don't take themselves seriously or that have fun in life also have a calling and have a moment where they have to step up. And you follow the goofy character until he has to fight God. And this is, this almighty being versus a little wolf dog in an astronaut costume is funny to think about, but it's also, if you want to go biblically, David versus Goliath, or, the little kindergartner with glasses and a limp versus the big bully that's been bench pressing since he was come out of the womb. It's these little awkward characters, I guess, kind of like Harry Potter, as much as I don't like him as a character.
No, why not?
I just think,
not that I'm some huge Potter fan, but I don't often hear that.
Just think he's a whiny crybaby. He's not fun to follow. I think all the other characters in the book are a million times more interesting. Neville should have been the one, in my opinion, but I love characters like Snape and Dumbledore and those characters, but Harry Potter himself, I just didn't have fun. But similar concept as, this character you wouldn't think would be the pertinence of the novel does end up being at least a large portion of it, obviously with the others around him to help. So there's that. He goes through this journey of realization anyway. It's kind of also like, he comes from his planet where it's just, they keep to themselves. They're kind of like this little country almost where they don't go outside. Mm-hmm. And he's leaving for the first time and joining the Federation, the Galactic Federation, and exploring the universe and meeting all these aliens and people he's never met, and doesn't really know how to communicate because his race is goofy and dog-like. And he's like, he doesn't really learn actually, because he does the same stuff all the time, but he's going through all these motions and really just having fun. But he does have a true calling and pertinence by the end of the story. And the 12 Knights, they all are struggling with their own stuff. Death is struggling with being Death. There's a scene where he has to take a life, and you can, hopefully reading it, you can tell that he doesn't want to, but it's his duty, it's his calling. It's not something he loves because it's sad, because he is the entity of death. And there's Love, who she struggles with. She loves everybody and everything, and she gives love, and touching her and being around her makes you love. And it causes all these different issues with different knights, with Lucifer, all over the map. And there's, the idea of loyalty, which people talk about all the time. And there's a knight that's based purely off of loyalty, and he's so loyal to almost a fault. And you like him, but he's almost this character that you're just like, wow, you're dumb almost, because he's so loyal that it's almost irritating, but that he's also endearing. So there's all these different characters that have these different linear paths, and some of them are small, some of them are self battles that we all go through, but in very like secular pointed areas, and some of them are more large scale.
And so the wolf dog is that the main protagonist who we're following throughout the story, or is it more of a group of them
It's
and they
kind of
meet
off
other people
and on.
along the way?
Yeah, you meet different groups. You follow him quite a bit, but you also follow the knights quite a bit, which wasn't my initial purpose. I was just adding them as like warriors, and then they ended up taking on a lot of pertinence. And then my editor read my rough draft and was like, wow, the knights are honestly super fascinating. And I was like, oh, really? So I wrote more on them. I made a lot of them come from mythology, like Achilles and stuff, to give them a little more pertinence and relevance to stuff that we've read and stuff that we know. That way it's not just, this outer world crazy mythology thing, but also, stuff that we read historically. So you kind of follow Garand, who's the wolf dog, a lot, but it also became a thing where you follow a lot of these other characters a lot, and a lot of these side characters become interesting. And, the knights have their own path that they have to do. And also, having the wolf dog defeat God on his own seemed too far-fetched. It seemed too much like, well, could he really defeat, the most mighty being ever by himself? It seemed like it would be a really boring ending and kind of silly. And people would be like, that's
Okay. Yeah, I could see that.
Yeah, so I added in, I love the Egyptian gods anyway, so I added them in and added the 12 knights in. And, God had already won a war against the old gods in my mythos. So they all have to come together and work together, and they're totally different beliefs and totally different systems. I bring in, the Human Federation's run by a queen and then two kings that are kind of like under her. She kind of runs the show, and then she has two kings that are pretty different, and they have their own little tiffs, but also camaraderie. There's like scenes of them at a bar where they're kind of like, yeah, we're totally different, and kind of like have this cool little scene. So there's really a lot of cool little side stories that go outside of just the wolf dog and his experience. I mean, you see a lot of the universe through him. He's going through a lot of the planets. He's going through a lot of this. And you learn a lot of what this universe is through his eyes. But when I was writing it, I didn't feel like only following him would do the universe justice or do the story justice. I thought it would be too much humor, too much, goofiness, too much funniness, and too lighthearted almost. You need some of that grit and some of these characters that bring in things that we actually do face to tie in all of it.
So the reader like an omniscient, like seeing things that Garand is his name?
Yep.
So the reader can see things that Garand can't see.
Right.
So he's not with him the entire time. Cool. Because it's funny that you actually said Endgame before, and I was thinking when I was reading the synopsis, the back of the book, that it definitely reminds me of that Infinity War Endgame type of, really the whole, first three phases of Marvel, where you had these different characters and they came from, all over the place. And finally they had to coalesce to defeat this mighty being. I mean, I guess, I don't know if you call Thanos a god, but close enough.
Pretty much. And it'd be like, if I only had Garand, it would be like, it'd be like Hawkeye beating Thanos.
Yeah, I was gonna say Hawkeye defeats Thanos with one arrow.
Yeah, and everybody would be like, wow, that's a waste of our entire, like, watching all these movies. So I had to add in all these, Iron Men and, Captain Americas and all these other people.
Yeah, that sounds very cool. Have you ever thought about doing any kind of like animation or anything like that for this kind of stuff?
So you know how you said writing is hard for you, like writing stuff out of nowhere? I wish I could draw. I've tried a million times to draw and do stuff like that, and I am the worst visual artist probably ever existed.
I hear you.
And I'm like, that's pretty good. And then I show my friends that are actual like good artists, and they're like, yep. And I'm like, oh man. So I try to leave that to them.
Hi, buddy.
Yeah, pretty much. And I did have an artist. I don't know what happened to him. I don't know where he went. He drew me a couple of drawings for my other series and then disappeared. So I would love to find an artist that could do these knights. And, I'm sure I could find one that could do the wolf dog. And, obviously people have an idea of what Anubis and Ra look like for their own purposes, but I would love to. Don't know if I'll get to that point because it's hard enough to find someone to draw my other series that those characters are way easier. And if I could do it myself, it would be cool, but it would take me like 2 years to even draw one to.
Yeah, somebody was telling me the other day that like just with the channel, I'm doing aside from the podcast, I've got a lot of different things out there, and someone was like, "Well, you should try to do this and do that and do that." And it's like, well, I already don't have the time to be putting out a video every day where it's just me talking to the camera. You want me to learn animation and then take the time to animate that? Like, I don't think you really understand what this is. So I definitely get you. It's not just like a thing you do. You definitely have to be prepared for that and plan for that and have that in there.
Like you said, the time is everything. If you have time to do all that, whew, by all means. But sometimes I'll write like a chapter and I'll be like, okay, I'm done. Like I go to work, I go to the gym, I write a chapter and I'm like, I'm beat if I write a good chapter. So I can't even imagine trying to have the mental capability of being like, I'm going to learn this whole platform now.
Yeah, exactly. So you mentioned how the publishing for this was very different than the story of a World War II vet. How was it? What were the differences?
A lot more editing, a lot more attention almost. I mean, it's way bigger book than the story of World War II vet, and everything's made up, but it still has to make sense. Like you can't just write something and then have it. You can't just make like a universe or make these characters and not have people be able to relate to it. You have to put these little things that like tie it down. Like, like I mentioned Earth, I mentioned Vermont, that's where I'm from originally. And I mentioned these little things that people can be like, oh yeah, I know that. Or, that's familiar. And
keeps it grounded a little bit.
Yeah. And I mean, the editing process obviously is much more expensive for a book like this. And getting beta readers for this was actually harder, surprisingly. I had a lot of beta readers for my bigger series I'm working on. Getting beta readers for this one was a little more difficult because I call it sci fantasy, and everybody's like, what the hell is that? And they're like, is it sci-fi? And I'm like, well, it's sci-fi-ish because it's futuristic and, spaceships and all this stuff, but I don't use any of that language. I don't use physics and all that stuff really like sci-fi does. But it's not your traditional fantasy where it's, sword and shield or anything like my other series.
Right. So how does that work, getting beta readers?
You can either do the professional way where there's like all these people that are like, oh, pay me $15 and I'll read your stuff and mark it up or whatever. And I've gotten that.
I would do that.
Yeah. I mean, it's not bad. Or you just find people that that read the stuff, or other authors that have the time and want to, and they read it and give you feedback. Like I have the problem of writing how I speak sometimes. So people will be like, that doesn't make sense in that sentence when they read my stuff. I'm like, I read it back. I'm like, oh yeah, that's just how I would say it. But that makes sense. It doesn't flow as well. And even I'll do that to myself sometimes. I'll read my stuff and be like, oh man. But sometimes I just get people I know, other writers or readers that have the time and just want to help and are good editors. I mean, I went to university for writing arts. So I always have friends or colleagues there that are willing to kind of on their spare time do that, and people that are in editing in general, along with 2 professional editors that I do pay to do it. But it's always nice to get a beta reader first. That way I can work out all those kinks before I have to pay all the money.
Right. So how many people do you end up having read it before you're ready to be like, okay, I got a good feeling for what I want to do with this?
This one, very few. Story of World War II vet, I only had a few. My big series, I've had like 26, I think, 26 or somewhere between 26 and 31 beta readers for that one. Because like I said, my heart and soul is in that, and I want it to be as perfect as possible. And I've gotten so much different feedback on it that I just keep getting different people to read it because I'm like, oh, what do you think? This one I didn't have as many because, like I said, it's for fun. I wanted it to read well and people to be like, yeah, it's good enough. And I mean, my editors looked at it and were like, it's grammatically good, as good as it can be. And my editor was like, if you are just doing this for fun, I wouldn't worry too much about these little details. And I was like, okay. I was like, that's good enough for me, because he edited my other one, and I tore it apart parts of it, and I was like, go ahead. And he's like, and I told him I was doing this one for fun. He's like, well, I'll just do the basic then.
Mm.
readable and make sure it's formatted right, and that you don't have like 10,000 ing words and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So
So
it
I
was
guess that's an important thing to have on your mind when you're first sitting down to decide what kind of, what kind of story you're writing and what kind of purpose you are putting into that work. If you're looking for something more serious or something that needs to be more true to life or historically accurate or whatever it is, probably a lot more work that goes into that and a lot more adjustments that need to be made.
right.
But if you're just doing something for fun, like, yeah, you don't want it to be bad, obviously, but it's more of your own. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean, I know other authors that just they've been putting out books, like indie authors that are just putting out books and they don't get them edited at all, and that to me is crazy. I could never do that. I've read some of them, and there's complete sentence errors that just throw you out. So, I mean, I want it to be fun, but I also want it to be something that you know is, according to my degree, functionally proper. I want it to
Oh,
be readable. I don't want it to have all these errors, and I want it to be at least a standard, like at least the
mhm.
a standard of being an author and English language.
Well, yeah, you're putting your name on it. You got to
Right,
make sure it stands up to your quality, your standards.
right. And I had waited for this one for a couple more beta readers for a while, and they, haven't got back to me in like 6 months. And I was like, I'm not going to wait on these two last ones any
Mm.
longer. I wanted to put something out and was excited about it and wanted to see the reactions I'd get. And my cover artist got back to me super fast. So I was like, I guess we're doing this. And my editor was like, hey, it's functional. It's good. I talked to him a few times about it and we went over this stuff. And he was like, it's good to go as far as, being the standard of editing goes. So,
Nice.
it's
And
kind of,
so, good.
it's kind of like, you see other authors and people, they have these works they really love that they can't get out there for whatever reason. Like my other series where I have beta readers that love it and people that love it. My editor even was like, you have something original, really amazing, but I can't get an agent to take it
Mm.
for whatever reason. So I'm still working on that. And then, you have these other authors that have works they really, really care about and they edit them to death, which I've done with this one. It's been edited, I think, like 18 times or something. This other
Oh,
one.
wow.
And it's exhausting. And this one, I was like, I'm not going to beat it to death. Like, I want it to be as good as it can without beating it into the ground like I have the other one.
And without taking the fun out of it, right? Like I remember when I would be doing like I said, I took some creative writing courses in college and then just like language arts courses in high school and stuff. And I always really enjoyed the writing aspect. But when they were like the editing process was so tedious and I was just like, I'm just gonna turn it in like this. This is probably good. And I mean, I'm certainly not a writer, so I don't know how well that served me, but I didn't fail a class, so I'll take it.
Yeah, I mean, that works. I mean, I just see, I see other authors, I hate to call it garbage, but if you don't edit your work at all, then, it probably comes off a little, if it doesn't read well and you're not using semi-correct grammar, granted, fantasy and sci-fi and all that has different rules. But I see other people just are like, yeah, I'm not going to edit it. I'm just going to ship it out. And I'm like, oh man, I could never even, your name's on this for life. This is hopefully your legacy. Hopefully, I can imagine George R. R. Martin being like, or Stephen King just pushing out a rough draft and being like, oh, it's good enough. And now being where they are because they look back and be like, oh man, I can't believe I did that.
He's on the complete opposite end of the spectrum. He's like, I need every word to be perfect.
Yeah.
Which I mean, hey, kudos, but like I've said before, I refuse to read and those books, because I'm a huge fan of the show Game of Thrones, but I as much as I'm not a reader, I would read that series, but I'm not going to start a series like that without knowing that it's going to be finished. And he's getting up there. Say again?
Waiting on book 6 is rough. It is.
Yeah.
And I just watched an interview where he was mad because he's like, people need to stop harassing me about it. And I'm like, man, we're all waiting. Like, we're dying here.
Yeah. You should be happy. And it's not like you put out the last book last year. Hasn't it been like 10 years or something?
Yeah, it's been a long time.
Like, all right, guy. Like after 3 years, then you kind of got to expect that people are going to be, the fact is, if it's a good story and people are enjoying it, then what do you expect? Yeah. And like, he's not I mean, I'm not his doctor, but he certainly doesn't look that healthy. and he's not young. So it's like, and then the next book is not even the last one. So it's like, and then he was putting out other like ancillary stuff and like prequels and stuff, and which again is cool, but let's finish the story.
Yeah, I mean, I assume it's probably hard just because, it's probably the same for him. He probably loves writing Game of Thrones, but he's probably like, man, everybody wants this so bad that it's almost annoying. Whereas he's probably having fun writing these prequels and these other stuff or whatever. And I know he's also working on like 4 shows or whatever.
Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Yeah, but you also, you started this. People love you for it. You got to sit down and do it for the people at some point. I mean, I think it's what every author wants that writes a series. I mean, if I could get book 1 out, book 2 is already on the way. Book 3 is already almost done its first draft. Like, I would love people to be begging me to put my books out. So
yeah, right. That's where you want to be. It's only he knows. Only he knows. Hopefully, because again, I would love to not only read that story so that I get the full effect. Because I understand that as good as the show could be, it's not the same as a series, especially of that length, that much detail. You're just not going to get that in like 64 hours of screen time or whatever it is.
50% best. The show is 50% as good at best. The books are like, I don't know. I'm a fangirl for George R.R. Martin, I guess. The way he world builds, like sometimes I read my stuff and I look back at his books, I'm like, man, I'm garbage.
Yeah, right. I'll watch same thing with big YouTubers or a great podcast. Like, damn, why didn't I think of that? Like, how do you do this so well? Or like people are putting out, great, well edited videos every day. It's like, yo, come on, I'm trying to catch up here. It's tough, but
Twitter half the time. I'm like, wow, your Twitter game is on fire. I'm like over here, like, man, I had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And I'm like, you guys like getting all these likes and stuff. I'm like, how do you get 25 shares in a day? How do you even post 25 tweets in a day? I don't even know. So like, I don't know. That's why, obviously you don't want to compare yourself to other authors. And I would never compare this book to anything like George R.R. Martin, because this is just like a fun, hopeful, people like it kind of thing. And obviously not my family, but that's okay. I like, I don't know. The editing process for this was just a lot more relaxed, and a little bit less went into it because it's so outer worldly that I can break a lot of the rules.
Right.
So I don't have that restriction. And the world building is a lot more vast than precise. Like George R.R. Martin or my other world, or even Tolkien's world, they're big, but you have a lot of precision to be able to like put these little details that actually really, really matter and keep tabs on, like all these mountain ranges and stuff. But where if you're popping into planets, it's kind of like, what are you immediately around? What's good enough for the reader to be like, okay, I get what kind of planet this is like.
And so I guess does that mean that there is a lot of traveling and so you're popping into this world and you're kind of giving immediate surroundings and you have a mission or a goal to accomplish there, and then you're moving on. Is that and instead of staying in a core 3 or 4 places where everything's happening? Is that what you're talking about?
There's a couple core places, but there's definitely a lot of hopping around. There's a lot of searching for the old Egyptian gods on different planets. There is, Garen finally being able to explore certain planets. There's a lot of searching and a lot of, little planet hopping that comes in here and there. There are a couple main areas where people are, like the Federation where the barracks are, the Human Alliance main planet where the Queen is. So there's a couple of main areas, but there's definitely a ton of like little areas giving you different perspectives, different worlds. The Dragonas, their world's in it quite a bit. So there's a few worlds that you really get to explore a little more than others. And there's a few you get to be like, this is like a crazy world, or this world's really extreme, or this world's almost Earth-like. Like one of the worlds is kind of like a giant Sahara with pyramids and stuff, but different colors and whatnot.
So how long ago, it's a 2-part question. How long ago did you start writing, or at least have the idea for this? And against the backdrop of how relevant is all the multiversal stuff that's going on in movies that seems to be very popular these days, obviously, with Marvel, but also I just watched Everything Everywhere All at Once. I don't know if you've seen that movie, but great movie, time travel, different universes. That's a very popular theme right now. Was that something that you were trying to ride the wave, or is this something that you've been thinking about before all of that?
I started writing it probably like 7 or 8 years ago.
Oh wow.
And I like the idea of different planets, from everything like Dune and all that stuff to just in general the concept of what other planets would be. I've always been obsessed with that. I follow like when they send the probes out and stuff. I try to follow that and all these sci-fi world building things. The multiverse, I definitely was not trying. I'd never try to ride waves. I don't like to be on those trains. Maybe the Game of Thrones wave a little bit with my other novel, but that's just because the style is what I liked anyways, even in university before I read or watched Game of Thrones. But this one, I don't want to ride the wave because that wave is going to collapse and crush everything under it. And I would also not want to compete with Marvel because obviously. But no, I just wanted to kind of give people, all these different planets and, that gods aren't restricted to Earth. If there was a god or any gods, why would they be? These gods are popping around. They have their own planets. They probably have home planets or other places they go. So that's why you see Thor in a bar, like being drunk and getting bar fights and stuff at some random planet. So it wasn't really try to ride the mainstream, and it wasn't really with any intent other than like these gods can be anywhere they want. They're gods. They're almighty beings. And, searching, even going to, like, I'm a traveler, going to different countries is almost, I just was in Switzerland and it was almost like a different planet in some ways. And the concept of that is cool. Whereas I feel like, a lot of the multiverse people are trying to be like, oh, what is the world like ours, but a little bit different. Whereas some of mine are like planets that rain diamonds and stuff like that. Like all these different things that could be out there that aren't, assimilated into the modern multiversal-esque culture. That's
right. So at least if the fact that you've had this idea for a while, it just seems to be kismet that like, oh, this is popular. This is what's going on right now. So, not riding the wave, you're not trying to catch on already, what people are already into, but it just so happens that something that you've poured all this time and effort into happens to be in line with something that people just happen to be interested in right now. So
yeah,
lucky you.
It took the back burner for a while too. So, I mean, it is probably a better time to put it out than after. Because I mean, Harry Potter got put out, and any books that tried to compete with that in that same like magical school-esque stuff was destroyed. Like it's dead because Harry Potter won the game and crushed it, and nobody else can compete.
And I guess as someone who doesn't read too often, especially doesn't keep up with new stuff coming out, I would imagine that it's very much like TV and movies, where if something hits, if something gets popular, then everybody else tries to do the exact same thing, and even the original intellectual property kind of gets stale because of what everybody else is doing. And that could be especially for you, for somebody who's not even trying to again ride the wave, then that would be super frustrating to me if I had worked on this and then all the Marvel stuff happened and then I put my book out a little bit too late, and it was like, well, wait, I had this idea first, or not first, but like way before all of this. So yeah, the timing seems perfect because at least again, Marvel is leading the charge on this stuff. If maybe not necessarily in terms of depth of content or anything, but just in terms of sheer numbers and eyeballs. And they are really just embarking on that multiverse type trend, whatever they're going to do with it. So I think this is perfect timing.
Well, I'm hoping Moon Knight did me a favor because Egyptian culture is probably
absolutely
died in the mainstream. So Moon Knight all of a sudden having these symbols and having this old Egyptian lore and everything come out, all of a sudden I'm hoping people will see my book that just happens to come out at the same time, wasn't even planned, and be like, huh, that's interesting. Just saw that in Moon Knight, and maybe be like, maybe I want to give that a read. So I'm hoping Moon Knight in that way sparked an interest, whereas the multiverse, if I was trying to compete with that, would be destructive.
Yeah, I hear that.
And
it definitely, like I said, because specifically because of Moon Knight, I was able to recognize, I don't even know what you call it. What do you, the thing in the foreground? Is it just called an Anubis? Is it? I
It's
know
the
that
wow. Now I'm trying to think of the exact term. I love blanking on these things. I always do it.
the
See, it's one of those things where-
something of Anubis, right?
yeah, this is one of those things. If you wrote it down ahead of time, you'd be good. But wow. And then you sit there and do
Not
that.
House of Anubis. Come on, we gotta get that sign
I think it's
somewhere.
called like the Ankh. I don't know how to
I
pronounce it.
think, yeah, that sounds familiar. That sounds familiar, and I don't know that much about it. So definitely, I think but either way, yeah, that's the timing of all this seems so virtuous, and I really think it is going to help you out because as somebody who didn't necessarily have a specific interest in Egyptian lore or anything, because of Moon Knight, I was able to see like, oh, there's cool stuff here that if somebody else were to do a story about the stuff that doesn't necessarily have to do with the multiple personalities or superhero stuff, like just within the Egyptian lore itself, there's a lot here. And again, I was aware that these ideas about Egypt and especially ancient Egypt were out there, but Moon Knight was definitely played a big role in me caring about stuff like that.
The whole idea of the gods and everything. Not only God and Lucifer, not only fun for the wolf dog Garen, but also the idea of whether you believe in the gods or don't believe in gods or believe in this god or the god or whatever. The concept of if these gods were real, where would they be, or where are they now?
Yeah,
They're in hiding, on this planet or another planet, which I play into, and also, was there a war? Because there's all kinds of mythology from China about these nuclear wars thousands of years ago and all this other stuff. So what if God just was like, it's my planet now, beat up, killed these gods with his angels that are powerful warriors, supposedly, biblically speaking, and sent them all off. So
that would certainly be a force to be reckoned with. That's for sure. So again, I'm trying to get a picture of the main story and the main plot. Is it that we enter the story after, because you said there was there was a war or something previously, from the point at which we jump in,
there's
or
been a lot
God.
of wars that people talk about. They talk about, or throughout the book, they talk about a lot of different wars. The wars from the Draganas and all these different wars from these different entities. That some of them you don't even see. Some battle flashbacks from different characters like the 12 Knights, but you pretty much hop in to Garen joining the Federation, and then exploring the Federation, and then stuff starts happening where they're searching, where these anomalies start happening from the angels and God searching for the old gods to kill them, to get them out of his way, because his intent is to return and destroy the universe. Take the worldly ones to heaven and kill the sinners. And he does plagues and all that stuff like he did in the Bible. And there's, the humans are trying to figure out what's going on. And while they're also fighting their own war, kind of, not really a war, but they're kind of, they're separatists. They're like humans only type of.
Gotcha. So there's multiple conflicts going on at the same time.
Yeah. Yep. And there's, some humans that have integrated that are like, oh, aliens are great. And there's some humans that are like, no, we're keeping to ourselves. We're human. Some aliens are like that too. Some of the other species want to keep to themselves. Some integrate. So you kind of hop into realistically a mess. You hop into a mess of a universe where you're trying to figure out who's on what alliance, what's going on. But then it all is tied together from these things that are happening that, people are finding. And then it comes together. And everybody starts searching for the Egyptian gods and like, hey, we need their help. Like they're the oldest gods known, and try to figure out where they are and why they're being killed. So the search kind of revolves around them, and that's where everybody kind of comes together.
Is it around finding the 12 Knights to eventually go and fight this fight? Like you're going through and first we're picking up this guy and then we're getting that guy and then we're getting this guy on this world, and or is it more of we're seeing a bunch of different characters and then their stories meet?
you're seeing a lot of different characters, a lot of different plots, a lot of different subplots, and then the characters meeting a lot of different arguments on whether the Knights should even join or not, because their loyalty is to the Human Federation, not to the universe.
Oh, so the 12 Knights are already an established group?
Yep.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they are the powerful warrior. They're the only reason. They're the only reason that the Human Federation is even relevant, because they're gods in their own right. Different types of gods, because they're not born gods. The 12 Knights are based off of, they all did something worthy. So when God killed the Greek gods as we know them, they sent like these little objects around the earth, and the characters that are now the 12 Knights with these god powers that took over their essence, were deemed worthy of something they did, or found them and found these little objects and became the 12 Knights. And then in the future, they become the mightiest warriors for the humans, because they have the power of gods, but they are not like born gods. So they're already there. They're relevant. They're, loyal to the Human Federation because they're from Earth originally. They're hundreds of years old. So they're already there, and their storyline becomes entangled when, whether to join or not to the human, what's going on in the universe. Is it their duty as godlike beings to join this fight against, the god, or should they let everybody suffer?
Spartans. So that's really interesting. And I guess the big thing that I'm not sure of how to conceptualize is what would you say is the underlying theme that you want people to take away from this?
I guess the underlying theme would really be question everything. Like, that'd be, whether it was purposeful or not, a theme that really is there is nothing is what we think it is, and that everything could be different. Like I said, it was more for fun, so there wasn't a lot of intent there as much as other stuff I've written, but there is the theme of, like, the script could be flipped. Don't always believe one message that you're told. Don't always take one thing, and almost don't be one-sided. Like with God and Lucifer, or, with the 12 Knights, their loyalty to the human faction because they're human in origin. Anything like that. Like, don't become multifaceted, ask questions, be open, don't follow this linear thought process without questioning any piece of it.
I love that. That one of the I think it was my second tattoo, but one of my favorite tattoos is a script on my my arm here, and it's my life motto, that is, believe nothing except that anything is possible. And as an as an atheist who grew up very much believing in Catholicism, and then realizing that that's not what I believe anymore, it was I saw a lot of people go from there to not believing anymore, but then thinking that they knew everything because they stopped believing that thing. And that's turned into like a whole thing that I could go on forever about. But the idea being like, okay, you figured out one thing that was wrong. Instead of thinking that you've got everything all figured out now, the more rational thing to think would be, okay, what else do I have wrong? And to, just like you said, question everything. So I absolutely love that.
Yeah, and I mean, I have the quote from Hamlet that's, nothing is good or bad, yet thinking makes it so. And that's relevant to me in everything I write, because not anything is one-sided. Everything could be good or bad, and it all depends on how you view it. So, similar concept, growing up Christian and going to Catholic, or going to catechism and all that stuff, and being like, even as an 8th grader, I was like, God seems like he can be a dick. And, the concept of, Jesus redeeming God, I love Jesus' teachings, and God seems like a really good tyrant, but,
he was great at it.
Yeah. Exactly. And this person's like, oh, I love humans, but let me destroy these cities and stuff. Like, all the biblical stuff. I was like, man, I questioned all of it. And it was always an issue with my family. And my grandma, my aunt, my mom, everybody, they're all like super diehard in their faith. And in some ways it's amazing to me, but in some ways I'm like, you don't question that? Or, not just Christianity, people with, Buddhism or Islam or atheists or anybody that has a certain mindset. I always question them. I'm like, well, what about this? What does this allude to, or why is this like this? And a lot of times you get similar answers all across the board, no matter what your belief is. Sometimes there's questions that you're like, I don't even know.
Yeah, and exactly what you're saying about people being so sure about their beliefs. That's always scared me, especially not like scare me like the world's gonna end, but like it's a frightening notion that people can take ideas that they don't fully understand and adopt them as and live by these ideas. Like there's people in my life who are religious now, but we're brought up religious, then went through an atheist phase, and then went back to religion, and they want to tell me that that's what's going to happen with me. And the question then becomes like, maybe I'm open to it. If I start to believe, then a good reason will have been the catalyst for that. But you don't seem to have any more information about this than you did before. So maybe there's a difference between my journey away from faith than yours, and maybe it was just you kind of stopped caring and then you started caring again, and so intellectually you picked up where you left off. But for me, I just did a video about this, about the angry atheist phase, where I would say most, if not all, people who came from a religion and then became atheists, there's this vulnerable time where you're like, wait, I was lied to. What happened here? And you get very defensive about virtually everything. And that's where the stereotype of a militant atheist came from, because we've all been there and we've all done that. And we've all, and some people love to bask in it, and they found something where they have an answer for something, and they want to stop there. But I almost want to say I resent it. That's a strong word, but it's like, no, you don't understand that I've put a lot of thought into my positions, and I'm always willing to change my position if I'm wrong. But for you to assume that because my position is not your position, that there's work I haven't done, again, I resent that, because it's like, well, I for sure have done more work on this than you have. So maybe you're right, maybe I'm wrong, but why is that why is that what you think? And the person is definitely watching, and I'm not going to call you out because I love you, but the notion that I am just going through an atheist phase and that I'm going to find religion again because flowers are so beautiful is a gross underestimation of how much time and thought I've put into this, and really have questioned these things and have ended up where I have, not from a lack of thinking, but because I have, again, put a lot of thought into it.
And I think in that way, my book shows my journey without me meaning it to, because I've never been atheist. I've always questioned everything and questioned if everything's real, questioned, what's real and why people believe that. But it's almost been my journey of, I've always been like this with Christianity, because I'm like, well, if there's one God, there's probably multiple. And I said, and how can there historically be texts of other gods before this God exists? And how can you call these ones fake and this one real? Or, how can you judge one religion and say that God's not the real God, but this one is? Well, they're doing the same thing, because what if you're both right or neither of you are right? Both of those are valid options.
Exactly.
So I think it kind of follows my journey of almost like, well, where are these gods? What are they doing? What are they like? Do all of them exist or do none of them exist? And, I've done that my whole life. Like, oh, what's this? What's this? Right now I've been practicing Buddhist meditation, even though I'm Christian, which makes me, biblically a
Buddhist
shitty
tattoo right here. Oh, I can't see it. Well,
See,
there you go. There you go. It's sideways, but you got it. Yeah, I respect that so much more than somebody who's a devout fill in the blank. And I actually do have a significant amount of respect for people who are devout Christian, Muslim, whatever it is. There's a respect there that you have I guess, stick-to-itiveness. But at the same time, because I don't really agree with your positions, it's almost like, these people are purposely not engaging with that that questioning of their beliefs and everything that I think is so fundamental, and not just in a religious sense, but just what you think about the world. And that's how people get stuck in these echo chambers and end up digging their heels in on this, that, and the other thing, whether it's politics or religion or anything else. This arrogance that you've got it all figured out is very off-putting to me. And so when people come across and say that I don't really know, this is what I think, but I'm willing to amend that, I always have a great respect for that.
See, I go back and forth. I really I almost find it, I find it, I don't want to use the word ignorant, but I do find it ignorant when you, or maybe they just know more than me. They could be super intelligent. I could be dumb. I don't know. It could go either way. But to me, it's almost ignorant to be like, yes, this is my belief and I believe that only. I think it's beautiful. I'm almost jealous sometimes. I'm like, wow,
absolutely.
It's so cool to have to be so sure that that's it. But to me, it's like, how are you so damn sure?
Yep.
Some of the reasoning I get doesn't make any sense. And that doesn't go for just Christianity. It goes for everything. Like you said, politics, it can go for relationships. It can go for anything. So I'm like, how can you be so damn sure of that? Like, I'm not sure of anything. I'm not even sure what I want to eat for breakfast tomorrow. So how can you be so sure of this is the afterlife, or this is the only way that this can happen, or this is the only way that this belief makes sense? And I'm just like, wow. And I'm in 8th grade when I was in catechism, I was getting my, what is that called? I should know this because I did it.
Confirmation?
Yeah, that. Yep.
Ha! Atheist remembers religious stuff. All right.
I was getting my confirmation and I didn't even smoke weed, so I don't even know why I asked. I think I was just trying to irritate the facilitator. But I was like, I said something. She was telling us all these sins. And I was like, why is that a sin? That's stupid. And I was like, why is smoking weed a sin? And she's like, cuz. And I said, well, didn't God create weed if he created everything on earth? And she got so mad at me. And I was like, but that's what you're teaching me. So how can I know any different? And that, I grew up hearing this is a sin and this is a sin. And I'm like, why would an almighty being give two shits about any of that? So, I always grew up questioning and really irritating people. And that's not just Christianity, everybody. And, I found that that's pretty much everywhere. One of my good friends out here is Muslim. And he's like, yeah, I'm not supposed to drink, but I do. And, he'll tell me all this stuff. And I'll be like, well, that's interesting that you willingly go against. So I think, my book kind of probably goes along with that. It just probably follows my wonderment of where all this is, where it all comes from, what it all could be. And, maybe that's the theme, is that we know nothing.
I love it. That's a great, that's a beautiful notion, to accept that. And it's something that people are so uncomfortable with, the notion of I don't know. And for you to just say, hey, I'm going to lean into that, is something that I wish more people were comfortable doing. And I can't think of a better note to end on than that. Question everything. You don't know everything. You might know some things, but keep questioning. And that'll never take you in the wrong direction. So I want to thank you very, very much for coming back onto the platform. Again, if you haven't seen the last episode that Timothy was on, it is 6 weeks ago, I think. It was IDRYB 30, of the story of a World War II vet. If there's anything else you'd like to plug, please, the floor is yours.
Nope. Just read my book, watch these great interviews, and keep on doing what y'all are doing.
I love it. All right. Well, thank you so much for joining me once again. This was a really cool conversation. And this book is got my brain firing on a number of different levels as to what this really could be. So I'm sure the viewers are ready to pick up this book. I've got the link in the description. So go purchase God and the 12 Nights by Timothy Robert. Any parting words for the people?
Nope. I hope you all enjoy it. Don't leave me a 1-star review, please. If you hate it, just email me.
Tweet there me. You go. All right. And then you have a great day, and see you when I see you.
Sounds good. Thank you.
All right. So another great conversation with Timothy. Again, having a repeat guest, I had a little bit more of an idea of what I was walking into in terms of who he was. But clearly I was, there's a lot going on with that story. I think personally, I've gotten better at asking the right kind of questions when it comes to fantasy and sci-fi. I mean, you guys let me know. Have I or have I not? But it's not just about what's going on here, what happens next, who are these characters, so on and so forth. The idea of not only having nonfiction books where like last week when we were talking to Blaine, and there is real world things to talk about where we don't have to necessarily stick to the book. I think I'm getting better at drawing conclusions based on the bits of information that I get, and then turning that into a conversation that you guys are enjoying. I hope that's the case. But let me know what you thought of that. I have been doing a lot more nonfiction just because it is easier for me, but I don't want to turn away from fiction, because I think as someone who is really into movies and TV and pop culture in that way, I think there is a lot of value in fictional stories. I think because you can do so many other things with that don't have to comport to reality, the questions that you can bring up really are endless when it comes to fiction, and specifically fantasy, and sci-fi and stuff like that. So I definitely want to keep doing more of that. But you guys let me know. Was this too much different than the nonfiction books that we've talked about, where I should focus on that? Do you like diving into these into the minds of these people who have such a vast imagination that maybe you guys do, I don't? Let me know. I thought this was really cool. And again, with the sci-fi fantasy stuff, it's really hard to know what to say or what to ask, having not read the book, when it doesn't have anything to do with anything that I know. But thank you to Timothy for being able to understand where I'm coming from, what I'm trying to do, and really making this an enjoyable conversation. I definitely learned a lot about how these things come together, and why somebody would, especially if you had watched IDRYB 30 and saw how he was and what he talked about when we were discussing his book, The Story of a World War II Vet, where his mom, I believe she was a nurse, and she was working with this World War II vet. And the guy just had stories on stories on stories on stories. And he's like, I just got to get this down. So definitely check that out. I will put that in the description as well, with all the other good stuff. But yeah, I want to hear from you guys. I know that I'm just fantastic at asking questions and having these conversations, but I want this to be, as I've always said, I want this to be a community, and I want you guys to be participating in this. Eventually, not quite yet, but eventually, this is going to be a live show, not just a live premiere. So, you guys will have the opportunity to comment as we are speaking and drive the conversation with your own thoughts and comments. But I need to know that you guys are going to be watching. So if every Wednesday I get there and you're not there, then I'm just going to assume that nobody's watching, even though I end up with a bunch of views throughout the day. Then in order for it to be live, it really needs to be worth it. Now, I understand that having a live show at 10 in the morning on a workday is probably not going to be the most accessible thing. So I am looking to move that maybe just to Wednesday nights or something like that. But that's all a little bit. That's in the near future, the not too distant future. For now, I love what I'm doing, and I want to keep doing this. And as I've been trying out a lot of other things, the podcast has really been something that has kept the channel grounded. As a growing channel, I've got to try different things. I got to try chasing headlines. I got to try doing videos where it's a little more charactery, like, hey, how we and stuff like that. And I got to grow. I got to make sure that the people who actually care about this are getting to see what I do and who I am and what this channel is, and that it even exists. before I can really double down on what I really want to do. So we're in a transitionary period as we're really growing. We're really doing more. I want to make sure as I continue to grow that I'm growing in the way that keeps you guys around. I'm doing this as much for me as I am for you. So again, let me know, what are you thinking? Did you like Timothy? Are you interested in this book? Did you watch the previous episode? All of these things, I want you in the comments. Other than that, please do check the description for the purchase link for Timothy's book, God and the 12 Knights. I think it'll definitely be an interesting one if you have any interest in Egypt, time travel, space, big battles, epic journeys, any of that stuff. It seems like this hits all of those notes. So definitely go check that out. Along with that, in the description, we do have, you already know it, those support links where I definitely need your guys' help. I drive for work, and work is slow, and gas is going up fast. So help a brother out. But even if you don't want to do that, it is completely free to like, comment, share, subscribe, and ring that bell. Please do all of that stuff. And even if you don't want to do that and you just want to sit at home and think about how awesome I am and how great this show is, you can do that too, but also subscribe. Until next time, I am out of here. See you then. Peace.